All right, so we're gonna go. I want to talk a little. Well, actually, I took a pretty good dive into the primetime games, the Sunday, the Thursday, the Monday, and I pulled up some stats. I'm going to talk about that for a little bit because I think it's something for everybody to think about. And then there's this COVID impact on what's going on with these games and schedules, and what we might need to either look into or walk away from related to that. By popular demand, I got some pretty good breakdown of the Minnesota Seattle game. I'm going to talk about the Jacksonville Houston game and just some stuff that goes on there. And um, I'm going to jump into some good value long shot Heisman picks, at least as of right now. Week 4, week 5, usually the guy that you think is going to win it doesn't. And there's always a couple picks that kind of make sense. And it'll play right into that Clemson Miami game on tomorrow night.
All right. Well, it's 6 o'clock, so I'm ready to go. All right.
All right.
Well,
Well, let's go primetime games first, and I'm bringing this up. I think everybody knows my stance on primetime games. I just won't play them. I'll throw $1 at a DraftKings, and that's about as far as I go. Every now and then, I'll be watching the game, and you just see a real good play that's just a can't miss. Over 13.5 by one team for the first half, and they just intercepted the ball. I mean, there's plays there, but just for taking the game before it even starts, it's a big risk to me. But some of what I looked into, and I'm just going to go game by game. What I came up with was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So far on these primetime games, Thursday and Sunday, just Thursday and Sunday, take Monday night out of it. Thursday and Sunday, there's been 6 dog wins. 6 underdogs actually won outright. And then if you look at where the favorite actually won and covered, um, you got the Chiefs on opening night, so they had a whole offseason to prepare for a team that eventually fired their coach. And then you look at this. You look at Seattle. They were another team that won and covered on Monday night, and Seattle's covered every single game this year, and they've been favored. So Seattle's pretty much thus far been a cash register, which you can look at it as they'll keep it going, or you can look at it as, well, that's kind of scary. Maybe we got to pump the brakes on it. But I bring this up because for those guys that want to play those games because they're on TV and you want to have some skin in the game, I totally get it. The trend right now is that you put your money on the dogs on Sunday and Thursday. Monday night is a little bit different. Monday night, there's been, I believe, 6 Monday night games at this point, and the favorite is covered 4 times, and then there's been one dog cover and one dog win. So just an interesting trend to look at. If you're going to play Thursday or Sunday night, the smart move is on the dog, regardless of how you feel about it. I think most of us watched the game last night. Um, I'm a Bears fan, but the last thing I saw coming was the Bears winning that game. Maybe a cover, but the Bears actually winning that game, and that's the kind of weird stuff that happens on Thursday night. Tampa's a great team. We fast forward 12 weeks from now, we're going to be talking about Tampa in a much different light than what we are this morning. So those games are dangerous, but if you choose to play them, uh, I'd look at underdogs before teams to actually cover. But now you get into this COVID impact. Now there's a Tuesday night game, and I don't really even know what that looks like or what that means. But all these schedules have been shuffled around. Pittsburgh was just forced into a bye week because they had a game canceled, and I don't know what that means going into a bye week that wasn't planned for. Because you would think that these smart coaches, and Pittsburgh's got a smart coach, you would think that they go into a bye week with a plan for week 1, week 2. But when it's forced on them, I don't know how they properly plan. I wouldn't bet against Pittsburgh in their next game, that's for sure. But uh, I know they just rescheduled the Buffalo and KC game, but the original plan, in fact, if you go to the CBS Sports app, it hasn't even been changed yet. But the plan was that Buffalo's going to play on Monday night, and then on Thursday night they're going to turn around and play the Chiefs. That just doesn't make sense at all. How do you do that with travel and everything else? So some of this COVID stuff, as if you make your own picks, you follow my picks, whatever you do, some of the thought that goes into what I'm picking. has a little bit a lot to travel has a lot to do with it in some cases, but with this COVID, now I'm starting to look at COVID games, and Tuesday night is just a weird deal. And how does that Tuesday night game affect the following Sunday? And some of this forced time off. It's important to look at some of this stuff, because again, it's not about picking the winner, to me, more so about walking away from what could be a risk and a potential loser. Um, so I don't know. Has anybody got thoughts on what I'm talking about at this point?
Well, I mean, I do for sure. So I think it's going to be interesting, especially for the longer term bets. And I mean, I have some stuff on, for the Super Bowl and especially for the playoff stuff. Uh, and so, what do you think about about that for uh, um, the longer term stuff? I mean, I don't know if you do that
Yeah.
at all, but I mean, how does that play in? I mean, is it more how the coaching would come into play, or which players are maybe brought out because of
Y-
it? I mean, does that come into play at all?
I think all of it. I think everything you're saying comes into play, and with these long term plays, I hit them, but I don't load up on them. I mean, when I say I hit them, I mean you have a 6-3 week, I'll throw $20 at Tampa to win the Super Bowl, or that's just an example. That's not what I'm playing, but you throw $20 at it, and you got yourself a nice bonus at the end of the season. But it's just like we do in stocks. Every day we buy the dip. You got a stock that you like, you buy the dip. Right now, you probably buy the dip on Tampa. If that's Rob, you've talked about Tampa before. If that's a team you think is going to win the division or win the conference or go to the Super Bowl or even win it, you got a nice dip today where the odds go through the roof. So you might have been playing that for plus 600 a couple weeks ago. I haven't looked at it, but I'll bet you're plus 700, plus 800 now. So you just play it like you play the market, a stock that you're going to be in for the next 3 months, and you just treat it that way. I don't know that you can play it like a stock portfolio long term and have balance, because it's all one sector, it's all one industry. Um, but yeah, everything you're saying plays. I think the coaching is going to be a huge deal. The coaches that are able to switch directions, and what's going on in Tennessee, and the COVID, that could happen to anybody. But what's being questioned right now is, are they following proper protocols? And I mean, that's the
Right.
coach.
Right, and so I guess teams that are maybe doing it right, and not necessarily having a bubble, but proper protocols and stuff like that. And if they do better and they're following the stuff better, then they'll have less people sick and all this other stuff. I mean, is that a possibility? Who knows? There's just so many people on an NFL team versus like an NBA team and stuff like that. I was wondering if that could come into play. I think it can.
Well, the well-coached teams typically don't have problems. I mean, they just don't. I mean, you don't hear about COVID or any kind of weird rules being broken and outlandish press conferences in Seattle or New England or Kansas City or Pittsburgh. You just don't hear about this stuff. So, yeah, you're right. The coaching does play a role, especially when you're trying to make an adjustment from you go from playing on Sunday to playing on Tuesday. Well, how do you keep your players motivated when you just moved your game forward 2 days? The whole routine is off. A bad coach won't be able to adjust.
So
So
is that you think that's in the lines already? Then?
I think I don't know that Vegas knows how to react to it. I mean, the Chiefs game, I'm sorry, I think it's a Buffalo game, was now pushed to Tuesday. I would think some of that's baked into the lines, but I don't know that Vegas truly knows how to adjust any of these lines. Some of them are crazy. Um, some of them are just absolutely nuts, and I don't know what to think of them, because there's certain lines. One of the guys made a comment last week. They're just begging us to play that one. Well, they always win. But yeah, I think, Rob, I think some of it is baked into the lines and the adjustments and the coaching. And last night being on a short week, I'm sorry, but if Tampa and Chicago play each other 5 more times, I don't know that the Bears would win even two of them. Um, I mean, I just don't. It was a Thursday night, and just Thursday night alone, that wasn't a weird COVID shift game, but Thursday night alone is enough to challenge a coach and challenge the approach. And then you look at the line; it was 3.5. If this was a Sunday game, I would bet that game would have been 6.5 points Tampa.
Right.
So All right, I'm going to talk Minnesota Seattle a little bit because there was some talk of it. Um, Seattle has covered every single spread. They've covered every spread this season, and they've been a favorite every single time. 4-0 against the spread. Um, this is a 7-point spread. And when you look at these two teams, what I'm looking at, and again, the way I'm breaking down might not be the way that you do. And I have pages and pages of notes on this game, but I'm going to keep it as simple as I can. You got the number 5 rushing team against the number 3 rushing defense. Minnesota can rush the ball. They absolutely can. They throw interceptions, although Seattle and Seattle leads the league in takeaways, or Seattle's number 2 in takeaways. So Seattle is happy to pick the ball off as Minnesota's throwing them. Then you look at Kirk Cousins. The man is 0-7 on Monday Night Football. You could look at that as is this a trend? Do I just jump on it? Is it possible for somebody to go 0-8 on Monday Night Football? I don't know that they win, but I mean that's worth looking at. There's something that happens with this guy on prime time, and he just can't get the job done. Although Minnesota rushes the ball so well that I think that they're going to keep Seattle's defense tired, and they're going to keep Seattle's offense on the sideline. Seattle gets Russell Wilson sacked a lot. He's been sacked 11 times in 4 games, and Minnesota can get after the quarterback. So I'm on that particular piece, I'm a little worried. Seattle also allows 27 points a game. They're going up against a team that could just kill the clock and grind it out. I really like the rushing attack of Minnesota. Now, when you go into some of their performances against the spread, I already said Seattle 4-0 against the spread. They've been favorites every time. They're a favorite again, laying 7. You look at Minnesota, they've been the favorite once, and they've been a dog 3 times. And 2 out of those 3 times as a dog, they've either won outright or covered. So Minnesota can be a dangerous dog. But the biggest piece that's got my attention, there's 2 huge pieces that have my attention with this game. Seattle, while they're 4-0 covering every spread, they've played Atlanta, Dallas, New England, Miami. These are not high-performing teams. These are not majority playoff teams either. Minnesota played against Green Bay, Tennessee, Houston. 3 of those teams are playoff teams. Green Bay was in the conference finals. So was Tennessee. And Tennessee has got a running back that'll just rough you up, and then they just play an odd type of game. And then they played against Indy, and they got beat by Indy, and that is the number 1 defense in football. Oddly, that is the number 1 defense in football. So you got Minnesota, who's pretty much staying alive in every single game. They have a record of showing up as a dog and covering spreads against playoff teams, playoff caliber teams, 2 of which were in the Final Four last year. And then you have Seattle, who really has covered a lot of spreads against some teams that aren't very good. They're certainly not very good at the quarterback position, the 4 teams they've played against. While you look at Minnesota, they've gone against good quarterbacks. All that being said, 7 points, add to it that you're going on Monday night. It's a walk away for me. I mean, I walk away from it. But all that being said, I feel like the 7 is too much. And if I were to, gun to the head, who you playing, the answer is Minnesota. I would take Minnesota and the points. They've been in every game against some really good teams, and that's where I land on that game. I don't know that they went outright. I just think 7 is too much. I think it'll be a 6-point game, and I think Russell Wilson will spend a little bit of time on his back.
I got something on that.
Please.
I'm going to talk. I want you to talk about the walk away. Okay, so we have this thing in retail investing, retail trading. So retail investors always lose, gamblers always lose, but the walk away is the only advantage you have. So, and I'm sure you guys talk about this in professional gambling and stuff like that. So what they say in retail investing is you you have the option to put your money in or not put your money in, and that's the only advantage you have, right? And so You guys talk about that at all? You know what I'm talking about?
Um, well,
So
yeah, I mean,
the reality is, right, you have the option to bet or not bet, and so if you don't feel like you have, some advantage or some, insight into the game, then you just don't bet, and so that's the advantage you have, and if you don't take advantage of that, then, you
and
know right?
and well, that's absolutely the advantage. I mean, first of all, you can't bet them all. You just you cannot bet them all. You can. It's same thing with stocks. You can't own them all. You balance your portfolio the best way that you can so that you can absorb highs and lows within each sector. And I try and do the same thing. I view Monday night as a risk no matter what. Enjoy the game. Just watch the game and enjoy it. And, play a $2 DraftKings, throw no thought or effort into it, and enjoy the fact that, like this past Monday night, I watched the Chiefs game. I had nothing on it other than being a fan. And I believe we finished 6-3 this week. It was a winning week. I allowed myself to be a winner, and I took a cash out, and that's a powerful thing. You can't own them all. You can't bet on them all. And this game, just the stats that we broke down, you could probably go through it and build an argument for both sides. And where I find it is 50-50. And when I'm 50-50 on every game, I take the dog every single time. But I walk away because it's just too much risk for me. The investments that we have for this week coming up that I posted, I feel like there's a lot more upside, and I feel like the breakdown has a lot more arrows pointing towards one team than the other. So, Rob, you're right. You walk away from it. That's walking away is a very powerful thing, and you've lost nothing. There's always going to be another game to bet on.
Well, and I bring it up because I mean that makes it a little different. As far as like sports, investing versus sports gambling and just being a degenerate throwing money at whatever
Yeah.
colored Gatorade you think is going to pop out or something like that. Some of the bets that they have out there that there's no insight into, and maybe
No.
you can be
And
a little smarter about it.
and to a point I made either the first or second week we did this, FOMO and a halo effect. Your frame of mind and your attitude just in life, forget gambling. I mean, that's just a very important thing to have under control. I'm not trying to be a life coach here, but in the sense of sports betting, you look at Monday night, and if you win it, if you win it, you will spend the next 4 days, or if you're looking at Thursday, but you'll spend the next 4 days feeling reckless. You're going to make a reckless wager. You're going to spend the next 4 days fighting your own ego because you just won a game and it was a standalone game and there's nothing else for the next 4 days. And now you're feeling like a winner, overconfident in what you're doing. If you lose it, well, you want to get it back. You got to get it back, and you're spending the next 4 days trying to find a way to get it back, and you might deviate from what the plan was and find yourself pissed off at yourself as you're pushing submit on the wager. That frame of mind to me is more important than the money and the spread. You go into a weekend, and really for me, you go into Wednesday and Thursday where you're doing your deep breakdown. Now you're overconfident in something that may not fly. So you walk away, control it, save your frame of mind, and just stay disciplined with it, and that's how you win the game. Um, what else? I'm just going to talk a little bit about this Jacksonville Houston. I'm not going to dive too far into this game, but something that's important to know is Romeo Crennel was a interim head coach when the head coach of the Chiefs was fired back in 2011. I was not a Chiefs fan at the time, but a buddy of mine said new head coaches are great for about a week. And so the first game that Romeo Crennel, a defensive coach, he was a part of a couple Super Bowls with New England as a D coordinator, but the very first game that he came out for the Chiefs as interim head coach, they beat the eventual Super Bowl champion Packers. They sacked Rodgers 4 times. One of them caused a fumble. I realized that this particular Chiefs team, that was the early years, first, second year for a lot of their defensive stars, Tom Bahali and Justin Houston. I mean, that was a team that was a coach away. But Romeo took over and just completely went out and punched the Packers in the mouth. Um, you can do whatever breakdown you like. Um, this Jacksonville team against Houston, I mean, it's a total mismatch. without this head coaching change and motivation. And I'm sure everybody's listening to some talk radio today, and it really seems like these players wanted the coach to go. So that one seems easy, but these interim head coach deals, usually the new coach is who you bet on because it does something in the locker room. It either motivates people to play harder. The new coach comes out and does opposite of the old guy. It That's always worth looking at. If it wasn't Romeo Crennel, it would be somebody else in a takeover interim head coach situation. But those are always worth looking at. And I would say probably 90% of the time, I would put my money on the team that just fired their coach. It would take a lot for me to not want to play that team. Whether even if they were a 17-point dog, I would take the 17. It's just worthwhile. They fired the guy to shake something up.
And I'm actually personal friends with CC Purnell, just so you know.
Oh, great.
On full disclosure.
Well, great. I said nothing bad about Romeo.
That's Romeo's nephew, by the way.
Yeah.
Also a prior NFL player. He's also the player development and guy at Rivers Casino in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and Jim Brown's granddaughter, right?
Oh, that's also a friend of mine too.
I mean, you've become quite the jersey chaser. That's great. All right, I'm going to talk about some Heisman plays. A couple weeks ago, I thought a good pick was this Florida quarterback Trask. Now he's the second favorite to win the whole thing, but one to look for. Actually, there's two to look for in the long term. This one will pay plus 2,200. I don't know that it happens, but it's a Louisville quarterback, Malik Cunningham. He got hurt for a second. He came back. They've been on a bye week, 2-week bye. This dude looks like Lamar Jackson. I mean, he really does. He's got an arm. He's not really stupid with the ball. He could take off. They've just played against some better teams, which is why they've lost. But it pays plus 2,200. That's worth $5. That's worth $20. You just don't know where this Heisman thing goes, and it'll typically take off in a couple weeks. That one's worth looking at. I love De'Aaron King from Miami. That pays, I believe, plus 700 right now. This guy in what's the start of a 5-year career in college, he's only thrown 10 interceptions, and he could run. This dude's got wheels on him. He's going to play on Sunday, and he's probably not going to get drafted until like the second or third round unless he wins a Heisman. But that's probably the biggest reason that I'm taking Miami in the points. And that game is actually up to 15 and a hook, depending on where you look at it. But I love Miami in that game. De'Aaron King and Malik Cunningham, those are two that are worth looking at for some lunch money at a Heisman play. Bueller.
Yep, I got you. And I saw your college post as well, your college games.
Yeah, I can go further into Clemson, Miami, if you want.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Clemson, Dabo Swinney, the head coach, has been very outspoken about being incredibly focused on, he calls it the middle eight, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. And it's a good strategy because a lot of the teams, they lose focus, but Clemson has been wildly focused and oftentimes won close games in that middle eight that he calls it. So I thought it would be interesting to break down that middle eight. And what I learned in that middle eight is Miami in that middle eight, the defensive-minded head coach, Miami, coming off of a 2-week bye. In that middle eight, they've outscored opponents 20-3. Had an interception and a kickoff return for a touchdown in that middle eight that Clemson owns and controls. I found that to be incredibly interesting, and I just started digging in even deeper, and I just fell in love with Miami in this play. Clemson hasn't really been tested this year. Clemson, they sack the quarterback, and Miami does too. But Miami's only allowed 3 sacks this year, and part of the reason is this quarterback is one of the fastest players in the country. So while Clemson is getting after doing all these wild blitzes, I don't know that they're going to catch this guy, and he doesn't throw picks. So Clemson's not going to get any extra chances with this De'Aaron King playing for Miami. This guy's he's a lot like Deshaun Watson, only he's more accurate. He just flat out 5 seasons as a college starting quarterback, and he's only thrown 10 interceptions. And granted, he played at the University of Houston, but the University of Houston was a top team in the AAC for a few years when they had Tom Herman. And they were a very high-powered team, at least as high-powered as you can be for the AAC. I don't hate Clemson in the game. I just think that 15 and a half is too many. Clemson has pumped the brakes a couple times. We even talked about it a few weeks ago. Somebody asked, I think it was week 1 or week 2, why did Clemson pump the brakes? But they let Citadel back. They just pumped the brakes there, and the spread was 51, and they won by 50. They let a couple teams back in, and I think that if they get a big lead, I think that they'll let Miami back in. But I don't think that they're going to get a big lead. I think Miami is going to reverse Clemson it, and they're going to own that middle 8. And this De'Aaron King is going to give them a real headache. Clemson defense and their blitzes they have a problem with these quarterbacks that can run around, and they haven't played any quarterback this year that can do what this guy can. So while I sound like I'm a fantasy guy, you look at the tape and you look at the stats, and this quarterback and Miami's defense has been fantastic this year. And they've got 6 takeaways. They've sacked the quarterback 10 times this year, and they're controlling the time of possession. So it wouldn't surprise me if they won outright. I'm not willing to tell everybody, hey, go bet them outright, but I have a little bit of a money line, just a small side deal on it, because I do like them, but I think the 15 is way too much. All that being said, I'm scared to death of week 4 and week 5. Last weekend, the fact that we won, I was looking for, 1 win better than 500, which this weekend I kind of feel the same way. There's just a lot of turning points that take place in week 4 and 5. And we talked about that a few weeks ago, where by week 6, we understand everything. I'm afraid in the NFL, COVID is going to change what we do and don't understand. But these weeks 4 and 5, you got teams that look good in week 1 that are kind of changing a little bit, and you got teams that even week 2 look pretty good. And like the Eagles is a good example. Are they going to stay bad all season? Like, that NFC East is wide open. Are they going to stay bad all season? I really don't know. The Niners at 2-2, nobody would have seen that coming. But at this point, they've gone from a very safe team to bet and cover to now they're missing their starting quarterback. So you really going to lay 9 points on them this weekend? I mean, that was a walk away for me. Oddly enough, the Browns have proven to be a very reliable team and the best rushing team in the NFL. So they've earned my money.
So you're saying if Miami wins overall, you're buying beer on Sunday?
That's a walkaway game for me, because again, you're laying 9 points on a third string quarterback, or second or third string quarterback. I mean, that's just the Niners may win and cover, but I mean, does that seem smart to lay 9 points on a backup quarterback? There's only like 3 to 5 quarterbacks in the entire NFL that I would trust to lay 9 points. 9 points alone would be a walk
Oh,
away
I'm
for
talking
me.
about the Miami Clemson game. They said
Oh,
if they win money line, you're buying beer on Sunday. That's what I said.
oh, well, I buy beer anyway, but sure, that'll make it a little bit easier. Bovada will be happy to fund the beer.
Oh, it's always good to get the Jew Magic to pay for beer. Hey, question: Notre Dame FSU.
Yeah, there was some talk of it, and the deal with that is, I think FSU is very dangerous right now, and I did not break down that game because Notre Dame is on my naughty list. They have been for years, and Notre Dame, they will win by 50 if it comes to them. If it comes to them, but they're happy to play a game where they win by 1 and win by 5, and I think that that's a very dangerous game because Florida State is not a good team this year. They've been recruiting poorly for years. And I love listening to Colin Cowherd, but one of the things he talks about is if you're a college team and you're going to miss on a head coach, you can't miss on a guy that's a bad recruiter. And they're coming off of multiple head coaches that were really bad recruiters. So this new coach doesn't really even have a chance to be good or not. Um, but but what I'm scared of with Florida State is they played Georgia Tech, they played Miami. I think most teams are going to get blown away by Miami. Miami's a great team, um, but then they win against Jacksonville State. I don't know if that win means they figured some things out and got a chance to actually practice against a live team. But you go against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame, they've played Duke and they've played South Florida. And if you look at the Duke game, um, I don't remember what the spread was, but they beat Duke by 27 to 13. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that might have been like a 16, 17 point game, which means it just didn't fall in their lap. South Florida, they beat them 52-0 because it just came to them. So I think the spread for this game is it 20 and a half or 22? 21. Um, it's Notre Dame could win and cover, but again, this is a walkaway game for me because Notre Dame to me is no different than K-State and Stanford and Oklahoma and TCU. These are just there's no telling when they're gonna cover spread and when they're not. Who had Oklahoma losing 2 games this season? I mean, K-State wins against Oklahoma, then they come out the following week and they win but don't cover or lose. But these are just odd teams, and Notre Dame is no different. This coach does not care about how many points he scores, and truthfully, Notre Dame, because of where they've been positioned in the conference, they don't have to care about style points. They just need to win out because they're playing a schedule that's made up of pieces from different conferences. This year, they're a part of the ACC, which gives them even less incentive to hang points because when it's all said and done, they'll find themselves playing in a conference championship game, what they never have before, and if they win it, they're in the playoffs. So again, it's a walk away for me. I'm not saying Florida State, and I'm not saying Notre Dame. I could see an argument on both sides, but when Notre Dame covers spreads, it's an accident. It is an accident.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're at half an hour, so that's about it. You want to just wrap it up?
I mean, I'm good. Does anybody on the call have anything they want to jump in with?
I think that was it, man. We had a couple questions, and I asked them for them.
Cool.
So,
Well,
um, hey,
this
as far as BCS for COVID, I mean, there's been no changes to the schedule. They haven't added anything, right? We're
No, there's no BCS. The playoff, who's eligible and who's not is unclear. They moved the selection back along with the conference championship games because of the Big Ten's entry. I don't think that well, and see now the MAC is in with only a 6 game schedule, but they've just moved it back. It's still going to be a 14 playoff. They haven't changed anything, but they've moved it a little bit later. So where it's normally like week 1 or New Year's Day. I think that they're going to end up moving the Natty back or the playoffs back. Who knows? It's constantly changing, but for this week, let's just get one win better than 500. Let's try and get out alive because week 6 is a big one.
all right. Sounds good. And look forward to seeing you on Sunday, man. It's been a long time. All right.
Yeah,
And we'll go ahead and post this here shortly. So if you missed it, it'll be recorded. Thanks a lot.
sounds good.